Commander Susan Miller stood at the window of Earth's orbital station, watching the diplomatic ships leave one by one. Each departing vessel represented another alien race abandoning their allies to a terrible fate. Her reflection in the glass showed a woman in her early 40s, with short brown hair and tired eyes that had seen too much in the past week. Behind her, the emergency meeting of the United Earth Defense Council continued. Admiral Roberts, an older man with gray hair and a stern face, pointed at the holographic display showing the spread of the void plague across known space. Within the last 30 days, 17 advanced civilizations have gone dark, he said, his voice heavy. The Galactic Alliance has lost contact with over 3 billion citizens. Susan turned from the window. And they're all just running away. Every single one of them. Not running, said Dr. Kate Wilson, Earth's chief xenobiologist. She adjusted her glasses and zoomed in on one of the affected worlds. They're quarantining themselves. The Centaurians, the Proxima Collective, even the Arcturus Federation. They've all sealed their borders. They're terrified. The room fell silent as images from the last transmission from Centauri Prime appeared. The footage showed beautiful crystal cities turning to ash, while shadow-like creatures moved through the streets. Millions of beings, made of living crystal, crumbled to dust in seconds. Play the message again, Susan ordered. A hologram appeared. A Centaurian elder, its crystalline form already showing cracks. This is our final warning to all species. The void plague cannot be stopped by our weapons. It feeds on advanced technology, on sophisticated life forms. Our deaths will be quick, but we have failed to protect the younger races. To whoever receives this, run. Seal your borders. Save yourselves. Susan watched her fellow council members' faces. Fear, uncertainty, but something else too, determination. We've only been part of the Galactic Alliance for 3 years, said John Hayes, Earth's head of engineering. He was a practical man who always had grease stains on his uniform. Maybe that's why we're still safe. We're too primitive by their standards. Primitive. Admiral Roberts raised an eyebrow. We have faster than light travel. Barely, John replied. Our ships still used physical ammunition alongside energy weapons. We still rely on manual controls. Hell, we still use paperwork sometimes. The Centaurians thought we were cute, like children playing with toys. Susan's mind raced. Something about this felt important. Show me the infection pattern again. The hologram shifted, showing how the void plague spread. The most advanced civilizations were hit first and hardest. The simpler ones lasted longer or weren't attacked at all. We're not primitive, Susan said slowly. We're balanced. We never abandoned our old ways when we learned new ones. Every other species in the Alliance went full digital, full energy-based, but we kept one foot in the past. Dr. Wilson's eyes widened. The plague targets sophisticated technology and life forms. But our hybrid approach might be exactly what we need, Susan finished. She straightened her uniform and faced the council. I request permission to lead a rescue mission to Centauri Prime. The room erupted in protests. It's suicide. We can't risk exposure. The Alliance ordered everyone to stay away. Admiral Roberts raised his hand for silence. Commander Miller, explain your reasoning. The Blades are the best special operations team Earth has. Our ships use both old and new tech. Our weapons are hybrid systems. If anyone has a chance against this plague, it's us. She paused, looking each council member in the eye. But more importantly, it's the right thing to do. When I joined the service, I swore to protect Earth. But we're part of something bigger now. If we turn away like everyone else, what does that make us? The Admiral studied her for a long moment. The Blades are our best team, but they're also our only team at this level. If we lose you, if we do nothing, we lose everything anyway. Susan said firmly. The plague will keep spreading. Running and hiding isn't a solution. It's just waiting to die. The room fell silent again. Outside the window, the last Alliance ship disappeared into hyperspace, leaving Earth alone among the stars. Finally, Admiral Roberts nodded. "Permission granted, Commander. But understand this, you'll be going in blind, with no support from the Alliance. If something goes wrong, we'll be on our own," Susan finished, "just like we've always been." She straightened her back. "I'll need my team ready in 6 hours, and someone get me everything we have on Centauri Prime. If we're going to save them, we need to know what we're walking into." As the council members filed out, Susan turned back to the window. Somewhere out there, entire civilizations were turning to ash. But where others saw hopelessness, she saw a chance to prove that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in abandoning its past, but in bringing it forward into the future. The blades would show the galaxy that sometimes the oldest solutions were the best ones. The hangar bay of Earth's orbital station buzzed with activity as the blades prepared their ship, the Iron Will. The vessel looked different from the sleek Alliance ships that had fled earlier. Its hull was a mix of traditional steel plating and modern energy shielding. Ugly but practical, just like most human engineering. Commander Susan Miller walked down the line of her team, checking each member's gear. Unlike the light environmental suits used by other species, the blades wore heavy combat armor with physical backups for every electronic system. "Run it down," Susan ordered, stopping in front of Chief Engineer John Hayes. He was checking their weapons, old-fashioned rifles modified with new technology. "Basic ballistic rounds with digital targeting," John explained, holding up a magazine. "Plus some experimental EMP shells in case we need to shut down hostile tech. Everything's hardened against electronic interference." Next to him, combat specialist Rachel Cooper was loading her favorite shotgun. She was the youngest of the team at 28, with short red hair and a scar above her right eye. "Still think these are better than fancy laser weapons," she said, pumping the action. "Can't hack a steel slug." Medical Officer Daniel West finished packing his field kit. Unlike the others, he looked uncomfortable in combat gear. His hands were steady, though, the mark of a good doctor. "I've got traditional medical supplies, plus the new nanotreatments. If this plague affects biology, we'll need both." "Communications are ready," reported Mary Porter from the ship's ramp. She was their link to home, an expert in both old radio systems and modern quantum entanglement. "I've set up 3 separate ways to call for help, including good old Morse code." Susan nodded, satisfied. Her team was ready. They had trained together for years, but this mission was different. They weren't just fighting for Earth anymore. "Ships prepped," John called from the engine room. "Fusion drive for main power, chemical rockets for backup. If one system fails, we can still fly." The station's warning lights flashed as the launch countdown began. Through the hangar's force field, Susan could see Earth below, beautiful and blue. How many worlds had looked just as peaceful before the plague hit them? "Last chance to back out," she told her team as they strapped into their seats. "No one will blame you." Rachel snorted and missed the chance to save some stuck-up aliens with old-school human ingenuity. "Not a chance, Commander. Someone has to help them," Daniel added quietly, "even if they think we're too primitive to do it." Mary's fingers flew over her console, plotting their course. Centauri Prime is 3 days away at maximum speed. The quarantine beacons are still active. They'll try to turn us back. "Override them," Susan ordered. "We're going in whether they like it or not." The Iron Will's engines roared to life. A real roar, not the quiet hum of Alliance ships. The hangar bay doors opened to space, and Susan felt the familiar push of acceleration as they launched. As they cleared Earth's orbit, Mary's console lit up with warning signals. Getting automated messages from Alliance boys. They're ordering all ships to stay away from infected systems. "Send them our response," Susan said. Mary grinned and pressed a button. Through the ship's speakers came the sound of ancient Earth music, the battle hymn of the Republic. It was an old tradition of the Blades, playing classical music when going into danger. "Setting course for Centauri Prime," John reported. All systems nominal. We're as ready as we'll ever be. Susan watched the stars streak by as they entered faster than light travel. Her team was quiet, each lost in their own thoughts. They had all seen the footage of the plague's victims, watched mighty civilizations crumble to dust. Now they were flying straight toward that same danger. But they were also flying toward people who needed help. The Alliance might have forgotten what that meant, but humanity remembered. Sometimes the most important thing wasn't having the best technology or the most advanced weapons. Sometimes it was just being willing to try when everyone else had given up. "Check your gear again," Susan ordered. "When we get there, we move fast. Find survivors, gather intel, and figure out how to fight this thing." The Alliance thinks this plague is unstoppable because they've forgotten that progress isn't always about moving forward. Sometimes it's about remembering where you came from. The Iron Will sped through space, carrying its crew of 5 humans toward a disaster that had defeated far more advanced civilizations. They were younger, simpler, and less sophisticated than the races they were trying to save. But they were humanity's blades, and they were bringing hope with them, whether the galaxy wanted it or not. The Iron Will dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Centauri system. The view through the main window made everyone fall silent. Centauri Prime, once the jewel of the Alliance with its crystal cities and rainbow skies, was now covered in patches of darkness that moved like living shadows. "Life signs?" Commander Susan Miller asked, her voice tight. Mary Porter checked her instruments. Very faint readings from the capital city. Maybe survivors in the underground shelters. She paused, adjusting her controls. "There's something else too. The shadows. They're giving off energy readings I've never seen before." "Bring us in closer," Susan ordered. "But keep the old-style engines running. Rachel, Daniel, suit up. We're going to check those shelters." The Iron Will descended through the atmosphere. The ship shuddered as they passed through clouds of dark energy. John Hayes kept his hand steady on the controls, carefully mixing power between their modern and traditional systems. "Those aren't just shadows," Daniel West said, looking at his medical scanner. "They're eating the energy around them, like they're hungry." Rachel Cooper checked her weapons one last time. "Then let's see if they can eat lead." The ship landed in what used to be a public square. Broken crystal buildings rose around them like shattered mirrors. The shadows moved across their surfaces, leaving only ash behind. "Full armor seal," Susan commanded as they prepared to exit. "Daniel, stay close to Mary. Rachel, you're on point. John, keep the ship ready for a quick exit." The team stepped out onto the crystal surface. Their boots crunched on what used to be living crystal, now reduced to gray dust. The air was thick with floating ash. "Movement ahead," Rachel warned, raising her rifle. "Big shadow, coming fast." The thing that came around the corner wasn't just a shadow anymore. It had taken on a shape, like a wave of darkness with hints of purple energy crackling through it. Where it touched the crystal buildings, they crumbled instantly. "Spread out," Susan shouted. "Test your weapons." Rachel fired first, her shotgun booming in the quiet air. The steel slugs tore through the shadow creature, making it screech, a sound that hurt their ears even through their helmets. The holes in its form closed quickly, but it backed away. "Energy weapons," Susan commanded. Mary fired her plasma rifle, but the beam passed right through the creature. If anything, it seemed to grow stronger. The regular bullets hurt it. Rachel called out, firing again. "It doesn't like physical damage." More shadow creatures appeared, drawn by the noise. The team formed a circle, backs together. Susan's mind raced. The creatures ate energy, grew stronger from it. But simple physical objects. "Rachel, the experimental EMP rounds." Rachel understood immediately. She loaded the special ammunition, shells designed to release a burst of electromagnetic energy on impact. When she fired, the effect was immediate. The shadow creature didn't just screech. It exploded, sending waves of dark energy washing over them. "That's it," Daniel shouted, checking his readings. The EMP disrupts their energy field, and the physical impact does the real damage. But there were too many shadows now, closing in from all sides. Susan keyed her radio. "John, we need." A new sound cut through the air, crystal singing. From a nearby building, a group of Centaurians emerged. They were damaged, their crystal forms cracked, but alive. They held ancient-looking weapons made of pure crystal. Humans. One of them called out, its voice resonating strangely. "The vault. Get to the vault." The team fought their way toward the Centaurians, Rachel's special rounds clearing a path. The shadow creatures seemed confused by the combination of physical damage and energy disruption. They couldn't adapt to both at once. Inside the crystal vault, Susan finally got a good look at the survivors. About 20 Centaurians remained, their forms dulled but unbroken. Their leader, a tall crystal being named First Light, approached them. "You came," First Light said, wonder in its musical voice. "When all others fled, you actually came." "We couldn't just watch it happen," Susan replied simply. "Now tell us everything you know about these things. We've hurt them, but we need to do more than that." First Light gestured to an ancient crystal archive. "We discovered something just before we lost contact with the Alliance. These creatures, they're not a plague. They're refugees running from something worse. But in their fear, they're destroying everything in their path." Susan looked back at the entrance, where more shadow creatures were gathering. Her team had found a way to hurt them, but that was just the first step. Now they needed to find a way to communicate with them, to understand them. Sometimes, she realized, saving people meant saving both sides. In the crystal vault of the Centaurian capital, Commander Susan Miller watched as Daniel West examined one of the shadow creatures they had captured. They had used a combination of steel cage and EMP fields to hold it, and now it floated there, its dark form swirling with purple energy. "I think I've figured something out," Daniel said, looking up from his medical scanner. "Our physical bodies, they're disrupting these creatures somehow. Not just our weapons, but us." Rachel Cooper, who was guarding the cage, raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "Look." Daniel held up his hand near the cage. The shadow creature moved away. Then First Light, their Centaurian ally, did the same. The creature moved closer, trying to feed on the crystal being's energy. "It's our biological electricity," Daniel explained. "Our nervous systems create a unique field. We're messy compared to the Centaurians. Our energy isn't pure or perfect." Mary Porter was typing rapidly on her tablet. "That matches what I'm seeing in the communication attempts. These creatures talk in pure energy patterns, but when they try to read us, we're like static to them." Susan watched the shadow creature closely. It wasn't attacking anymore. Instead, it seemed curious, moving back and forth as Daniel and First Light took turns approaching it. "They're running from something," Susan said slowly. "Something that hunts them. Maybe our messiness is useful to them." First Light's crystal form glowed softly. "Our civilization sought perfection in all things. Pure energy, pure crystal, pure thought. We thought the shadow beings wanted to destroy us, but perhaps they're trying to hide." John Hayes finished. He had been quiet until now, thinking. "Like changing your energy signature to avoid detection. But they don't know how to do it without destroying what they touch." Susan made a decision. "Mary, can you rig up some kind of translator? Something that can convert our bioelectric patterns into their energy language?" "Maybe," Mary said. "But it's dangerous. If we get it wrong." "We have to try," Susan insisted. "They're scared, and they're killing people because they don't know how to ask for help." The next few hours were tense. Mary and John worked on the translator, while Daniel studied how the shadow creatures reacted to different human bioelectric patterns. Rachel kept watch, her modified shotgun ready. Finally, Mary called them over. "It's ready. Basic stuff only. Emotions and simple concepts. Who wants to try?" I will, Susan said. She stepped up to the cage as Mary attached sensors to her temples. How does it work? Think calm thoughts, Mary instructed. The translator will convert your brain's electrical patterns into their kind of energy. But be careful, too much emotion could overload it. Susan faced the shadow creature. It moved closer, seeming to study the new energy patterns coming from the translator. She thought about peace, about helping, about finding safety. The creature's form changed. The swirling darkness slowed, and patterns of light began to appear within it. Through the translator came feelings of fear, of exhaustion, of desperate hope. They're like refugees, Daniel said softly, running so hard and so fast they didn't even realize what they were doing to others. The shadow creature pressed against the cage, not trying to break free, but trying to communicate. Through the translator came broken images, massive beings of pure light, hunting them across the galaxy, destroying any shadow creature they found. That's why they attacked the most advanced civilizations first, John realized. They were trying to hide their energy signature in the chaos of destroyed systems. They didn't understand they were killing people. Susan made another decision. She nodded to Rachel, who disabled the cage's EMP field. The shadow creature floated free, but didn't attack. Instead, it moved closer to Susan, its energy field gently touching the space around her. Through the translator came a new feeling, something like gratitude, mixed with sorrow. We can help you, Susan said, hoping the creature could understand. We can teach you how to hide without destroying. Our primitive technology, our biological energy, it's different from what's hunting you. First Light stepped forward, its crystal form glowing brightly. The Alliance abandoned both you and us. But the humans, they saw past their fear to find understanding. The shadow creature's form changed again, becoming less chaotic, more structured. Through the translator came a clear message. Others were coming. More shadow creatures, fleeing the hunters of light. Susan straightened her back. They had found a way to communicate, but that was just the beginning. Now they had to find a way to save both the shadow creatures and the civilizations in their path. And they had to do it before the hunters of light arrived. The Iron Will's cargo bay had become a makeshift laboratory. John Hayes and Mary Porter worked on modified versions of their translator, while Daniel West studied the patterns of human brainwaves that seemed to calm the shadow creatures. Commander Susan Miller watched as Rachel Cooper tested their latest invention. Bullets coated with a special gel that carried human bioelectric patterns. Ready for the test, Rachel called out, loading her rifle. The target was a piece of crystal that a shadow creature had started to consume. She fired, and the gel-coated bullet struck. Instead of destroying the crystal further, the shadow creature pulled back, responding to the human energy signature. It works, Daniel said, checking his readings. The bioelectric pattern stays stable even after impact. We can push them back without hurting them. First Light entered the cargo bay, its crystal form dimmed with worry. More shadow beings approach. Our long-range sensors detect hundreds of them, maybe thousands. Susan nodded grimly. And behind them, the hunters, beings of pure light, moving faster than our fastest ships. Mary looked up from her workstation. The good news is we found a way to mask energy signatures. The bad news is we can't do it fast enough for all of them. John wiped grease from his hands and stood up. Maybe we don't have to. He walked to a holographic display showing Centauri Prime. Look at the planet's magnetic field. If we could amplify it, coat it with our bioelectric pattern, we could hide the whole planet, Susan finished. Make it look like background noise to the hunters. Rachel checked her ammunition stocks. That's great for one planet, but what about the others? What about Earth? One problem at a time, Susan said. She turned to First Light. We need your crystal technology. Your people can amplify and direct energy better than anyone else. First Light glowed brighter, a sign of agreement. We have crystal arrays throughout the city. They were meant to enhance our mental energies, but perhaps they can enhance our bioelectric field instead. Daniel said excitedly. "If we can hook up enough humans to the array." "No," Susan cut in. "Too dangerous. We'll use the patterns we've recorded. I won't risk anyone's mind." John raised his hand. "What if we use the Iron Will's power core? It's based on human tech. Messy, imperfect, just like us. If we run it through the crystal arrays." The ship shuddered. Mary rushed to her console. "Multiple shadow creatures entering the atmosphere. They're running scared. The hunters must be close." Susan made her decision. "John, Mary, get that field running. Rachel, Daniel, gather every bit of gel-coated ammo we have. First Light, we need your people to power up every crystal array in the city." Everyone moved at once. John and Mary began rewiring the ship's power core, while Rachel and Daniel distributed the special ammunition to the few surviving Centaurian guards. First Light led its people in awakening the ancient crystal arrays that lined the streets. The sky above turned dark as hundreds of shadow creatures poured into the atmosphere. Behind them, just visible at the edge of space, came pinpoints of pure, burning light. "Power core ready," John shouted. "Crystal arrays at full power." First Light's voice rang out. "Field activating in 3, 2, 1. Mary pressed the final command. The Iron Will's engines screamed as they poured power into the crystal arrays. A wave of energy swept across the planet. Not the pure, perfect energy of the Centaurians, but the complex, chaotic patterns of human bioelectricity. The shadow creatures stopped their panicked flight, sensing the field. Through their translators came feelings of confusion, then understanding, then hope. They began to settle into the field, their forms becoming calmer, more ordered. The hunters. Rachel pointed to the sky. The beams of light had entered the atmosphere, massive, brilliant forms that hurt to look at. They swept the area with beams of burning energy, searching. Susan held her breath. Everything depended on this moment. The hunters paused, their light dimming slightly. They moved back and forth, scanning. Then, slowly, they began to rise, returning to space. "They can't see them," Daniel whispered. "The bioelectric field. It's hiding everything." Through the translators came waves of relief and gratitude from the shadow creatures. They weren't running anymore. They had found sanctuary. First Light approached Susan, its crystal form glowing with newfound hope. "You did it. When all others turned away, humanity found a way to save both our peoples." Susan watched as shadow creatures and Centaurians began working together, learning to coexist in their shared space. "We just had to stop seeing them as enemies," she said. "Sometimes the best way to fight isn't to fight at all." But their work wasn't done. The hunters were still out there, and other worlds needed protection. The Blades had found a solution, but now they had to share it with a galaxy that had turned its back on them. And time was running out. The Iron Will raced through space, pushing its engines to their limits. Behind them, 3 hunter ships of pure light gave chase. In the cargo hold, Mary Porter worked frantically to send their message to every Alliance world she could reach. "Message repeating on all frequencies," she reported, "both old radio and quantum channels. We have a solution. We can protect you. Don't run." Commander Susan Miller gripped her chair as John Hayes made another sharp turn. "Any responses?" "Most stations are silent," Mary said. "But, wait. Getting a signal from New Terra colony. They're under attack by shadow creatures right now. Hunters approaching their system. That's our next stop," Susan decided. "John, can we make it?" John's hands flew over the controls. "If these hunters don't catch us first." "Rachel, how's our rear defense looking?" Rachel Cooper manned the weapons station, firing bursts of their bioelectric rounds to keep the hunters at bay. "They don't like our new ammo, but we're running low." Daniel West emerged from the medical bay. "I've prepared more biogel, but we need time to coat more rounds." The ship shuddered as a beam of pure light grazed their shields. On their view screen, New Terra grew larger. A blue-green world much like Earth. Swarms of shadow creatures filled its orbit, fleeing from approaching hunter ships. They're about to repeat what happened on Centauri Prime, Susan said, unless we stop it. Mary, broadcast our message to both sides. Mary activated their improved translator. Instead of words, it sent waves of human bioelectric patterns, patterns that meant peace, safety, and hope. The shadow creatures responded first, their frantic movements slowing. New Terra Defense Command responding. Mary called out. They're asking for proof that our solution works. Show them, Susan ordered. John activated their external cameras, transmitting images of Centauri Prime. Shadow creatures and crystal beings living together, protected by the human bioelectric field. The hunters couldn't see them, couldn't find them. They're letting us land, Mary reported. But the hunters are still coming. The iron will dove through New Terra's atmosphere, its hull glowing red-hot. Behind them, the hunters followed, their light burning through clouds like angry stars. Ready the ground equipment, Susan commanded. Rachel, Daniel, prepare for surface deployment. John, Mary, start networking with the colony's power grid, just like we practiced. They landed hard in the colony's main square. Colonists ran for cover as shadow creatures swirled overhead. The hunters were minutes away. The blades moved fast, years of training paying off. Rachel and Daniel set up portable generators while John and Mary connected them to the colony's power grid. Susan coordinated with colony leaders, showing them how to adjust their shields to project the bioelectric field. Hunters entering the atmosphere, Mary warned. Field generators at 60%. John reported. We need more power. Susan grabbed the colony leader's arm. Your backup generators, all of them. Now. The colony leader hesitated for just a second, then nodded. Do it. Divert all power. Power flowed from every source in the colony. Backup generators, vehicle batteries, even personal devices. The bioelectric field grew stronger, spreading out like a dome over the city. The hunters arrived in a blaze of light that turned night into day. They swept the area with burning beams, searching for their prey. Shadow creatures huddled close to the ground, their forms rippling with fear. Field at maximum, John shouted over the roar of generators. Hold. Susan watched the hunters, her heart pounding. Hold. The beams of light paused, their brilliant forms dimming in confusion. They passed over the colony again and again, but the bioelectric field hid everything. Humans, shadow creatures, the entire colony, making it all look like background noise. Finally, the hunters rose back into space, their light fading from view. Through their translator came waves of gratitude from the shadow creatures. The colonists emerged from hiding, staring in wonder as the dark beings settled peacefully around their city. Commander, Mary called out, getting signals from other colonies, other worlds. They saw what we did. They want our help. Susan looked at her team, tired but proud. The Blades had done what no one thought possible. They'd found a way to save both sides, to turn enemies into allies. Send them the plans for the field generators, she ordered. All of them. No more running, no more hiding. It's time to show the galaxy that humanity's greatest strength isn't our weapons or our technology. It's our humanity, Daniel finished quietly. But as they prepared to help the next world, their scanners picked up something new. The hunters weren't leaving. They were gathering, building up to something bigger. The real test was still to come. The Great Hall of the Galactic Alliance was silent as Commander Susan Miller stood before the Emergency Council. Representatives from 32 species watched her, some in person, others through holograms. The shadow creatures floated peacefully near Earth's section, while the hunters waited at the far end, their light carefully dimmed. 3 months ago, everyone ran. Susan began. Everyone except humanity. We didn't run because we remembered something the Alliance had forgotten. Sometimes the greatest progress comes from looking back. The Iron Will's crew stood behind her. Rachel Cooper, Daniel West, John Hayes, and Mary Porter. The team that had changed everything. First Light, their Centaurian ally, glowed softly beside them. The hunters, Susan gestured to the light beings, were created by an ancient race. They were programmed to eliminate energy patterns they didn't recognize. The shadow creatures were refugees, fleeing across space, accidentally destroying worlds as they try to hide. Through Mary's translator, both the hunters and shadow creatures sent waves of agreement. The translator had taken weeks to perfect, but now it let all species communicate. We solved the crisis not with advanced technology, but with the simple quirks of human biology. Our imperfect, messy bioelectric patterns became the bridge between order and chaos. John stepped forward, showing holograms of their defense systems. We've installed bioelectric field generators on 12 worlds so far. Shadow creatures and local species living together, hidden from hunter protocols. But it's not enough. The hunters' base programming must be changed, Susan continued. They were made to protect, not destroy. We can help them remember that purpose. A Proximan counselor stood up. Why should we trust human judgment? You're the youngest species here. Because we were right, Rachel said firmly. When you ran, we stayed. When you fought, we found another way. Daniel activated a medical display. The hunter's programming is like a virus, spreading between them. We can use the same bioelectric patterns that hide worlds to rewrite it. Help them choose their own path. The hunter representatives moved forward, their light pulsing in complex patterns. Through the translator came their message. They were tired of endless hunting. They wanted peace. The shadow creatures have already agreed to help, Mary added. Their energy patterns, combined with our bioelectric field, can reach all hunter units at once. First Light's crystal form sparkled. The Centaurians will add our strength as well. Together, we can end this cycle of fear and destruction. Susan looked at each council member. We're not asking permission. Earth and its allies will do this with or without alliance support. But together, we can make it work better, faster, save more lives. The council chamber erupted in discussion. Species that hadn't spoken to each other in months now debated, planned, and slowly came to agreement. The next few hours were intense. The Iron Will's crew coordinated the largest joint operation in Alliance history. Hunter ships gathered above Earth, while shadow creatures surrounded them in a vast cloud. Centaurian crystals amplified the human bioelectric field to unprecedented levels. Ready for transmission, Mary reported from her station. All hunter units linked, John confirmed. Shadow creatures in position, Rachel added. Medical systems standing by, said Daniel. Susan took a deep breath. Begin. The bioelectric pulse went out, not hiding this time, but changing. Shadow creatures added their energy, their story of flight and fear. Hunters absorbed the patterns, their light flickering as ancient programming met new understanding. For one terrible moment, nothing happened. Then the hunter's light changed. The harsh, burning brilliance softened into something warmer, more alive. Through the translator came new emotions, awakening, recognition, regret, and hope. The shadow creatures swirled around them, no longer afraid. Both species' energy patterns began to harmonize, finding balance after eons of conflict. In the council chamber, Susan watched the delegates' faces, amazement, relief, pride. The Alliance had found its way again, led by its youngest member. Commander Miller, the council speaker said formally, the Alliance acknowledges humanity's service. Your primitive methods have proven to be exactly what our civilization needed. What would you ask in return? Susan smiled. Just remember this. Progress isn't always about moving forward. Sometimes it's about remembering where you came from and helping others find their way home. The Blades had done what they set out to do. They'd brought hope when all had turned away. They'd shown the galaxy that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in running from its past, but in bringing it forward to light the way to a better future. As celebrations began across Alliance space, Susan looked at her team. Not just soldiers now, but bridges between worlds. The galaxy was changing, growing, learning to embrace both shadow and light. And humanity, young and imperfect, had shown them how.